Some dates matter in ways that no calendar can explain. For Amanda and me, June 12th wasn't a birthday or an anniversary. It was something more personal, the day we met 15 years ago at a Riverside art show in Eugene. We both reached for the same cedar sculpture, laughed, made small talk that stretched into hours, and ended the evening walking along the riverbank like we were already in love. It was effortless. And for years, we honored it. Every June 12th, I'd cook. She'd pick the wine. We'd sit on the deck behind our house in Oregon, watching the sun drop behind the pines, remembering. This year, I really leaned in. I spent the afternoon prepping cedar-planked salmon, just like the dish we had on our first real date. I laid out wild rice, roasted squash from the garden, and baked a peach cobbler from her mother's old recipe. Amanda always said the smell of cinnamon and butter reminded her of summers at her grandmother's. I even cleaned the deck furniture and set the table out back with real cloth napkins and the good plates. A little over the top maybe, but it mattered to me. I lit 2 candles. Put on that old playlist we made when we drove to Big Sur in our second year of dating, a mix of Fleetwood Mac, Van Morrison, and some Moody Bon Iver that we both loved. She was supposed to be home by 7. At first, I didn't think much of it. Amanda's job, marketing executive at a regional tech firm, had always been demanding. Last-minute calls, rescheduled meetings, new campaigns. It wasn't unusual for her to text me from work with a running late or a save me some. But by 7:30, I started checking my phone every few minutes. No message. No missed call. Just the soft hum of the playlist and the quiet crackle of the salmon cooling off. By 8:15, I blew out the candles. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat outside, staring at the empty chair across from me. The food was cold, untouched. I didn't feel angry, not at first. Just a little disappointed maybe. Hurt, but trying to be understanding. At 8:43, my phone finally buzzed. Something came up at work. Meeting ran late. Sorry, can't make it. Love you. That was it. No punctuation beyond the period. No call. Just that text. The kind of message you send when you don't want to deal with a real conversation. I read it 3 times before locking my phone and slipping it into my pocket. I left the food on the counter. The wine stayed half full on the deck. I went to bed not long after 10, pretending I was just tired and not quietly wondering why something didn't feel right. The silence that night wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, like the house itself knew what I didn't. The next morning, I woke up before Amanda, which had become more common in recent months. I made coffee like I always did, 1 scoop too strong, just the way she hated it. I wasn't feeling generous enough to dilute it. She came downstairs around 8:30, dressed for work already, hair done, makeup on. She smelled like her new perfume, something more floral, more expensive than the lavender stuff she used to wear. Morning, she said, casual as if nothing had happened. Morning. I didn't ask about the dinner. I didn't need to. I waited until she left before I opened her Instagram. Just habit, really. I didn't expect anything. But when I clicked on her story, the first image stopped me cold. It was a wine bar, trendy, dimly lit, with charcuterie on the table and 2 glasses of red in the foreground. Amanda was in the frame, smiling at the camera, head tilted just slightly the way she did when she wanted to look cute but effortless. Across from her, barely visible, was the blurred outline of a man's arm. His hand resting near hers. No face, the image was clearly cropped, but not well enough. There was a suit cuff. And a watch, silver, modern. Definitely not the kind of guy who works in her department. I clicked back and stared at the story again. The timestamp read 8:11 p.m. The same time I was blowing out candles. The same time I was wondering if she was stuck in traffic or just exhausted. When I confronted her that evening, I didn't raise my voice. That's not who I am. I waited until we both had dinner, a quiet one, with takeout she brought home. Thai. She ate hers on the couch while scrolling through emails. I waited until she closed her laptop. Was it a work meeting last night? I asked. She blinked. Paused. Yeah. Why? Your story said otherwise. She frowned, then tilted her head, annoyed. Cohen, it was a client dinner. That's still work. Who was the client? She shrugged. David Hunt. Financial guy. Nothing scandalous. David Hunt. That name struck a nerve. I couldn't place it right away, but I remembered later. He was the one who helped us sort out our refinancing a couple years back. The one who Amanda had raved about for being so sharp, so efficient. I just thought it was weird you didn't call, I said, still calm. Especially since you knew what night it was. She looked at me flatly. You're overreacting. And just like that, the conversation was over. But something in me cracked. Not a big crack. Not a shattering, just a fine line splitting something that had once felt solid. Her dismissal hurt more than the missed dinner. Not because of what she did, but because of what she didn't do. She didn't acknowledge the importance of that night. She didn't apologize. She didn't even pretend to care that I'd been sitting alone for hours, waiting for her. It wasn't just her absence. It was the way she erased the whole evening with one shrug and a vague excuse. That night, lying in bed beside her, I watched her scroll on her phone with the screen tilted away from me. Her face lit up in the glow of it, completely unreadable. I stared at the ceiling, thinking about the salmon now sitting in a Tupperware in the fridge, about the playlist that had kept playing even after I walked away, about how the deck had felt colder than usual. And that was the moment, I think, not when I saw the photo, not when I read the text, but right then, in the dark beside her, that something shifted. A weight settled in my chest that hadn't been there before. I didn't say anything. I didn't accuse her. I didn't check her phone or raise suspicion. But I knew. I knew something had changed. That maybe it had been changing for longer than I realized. And whatever this was, this lie wrapped in normalcy, this ghost of a tradition we used to treasure, it wasn't just a fluke. It was a fracture. And I couldn't pretend it was anything else anymore. After that night, the restlessness wouldn't leave me. It was like trying to fall asleep with a loose nail scratching behind the drywall. Subtle, but impossible to ignore once you noticed. I kept telling myself to let it go, that maybe Amanda really had been with a client. Maybe I was reading too much into one evening. People forget dates. People make mistakes. But that rational voice inside me, it had been quieter lately. What I couldn't shake was the feeling that this wasn't new. That this night wasn't the start of something, but a symptom of something that had already begun *n, maybe long before I was ready to see it. So I started looking backward. Not obsessively at first. Just small things. I'd catch myself replaying conversations, little patterns I hadn't questioned at the time. Her business trips had gone from once every few months to nearly every other week. She always used to leave me notes when she traveled. Short, sweet things. Love you. See you Sunday. Or, don't forget to feed the neighbor's cat. I hadn't seen one of those in almost 6 months. Her trips had become vague, too. There's a summit in Bend. I'll be in Spokane for a client review. No hotel names. No conference pamphlets left in her suitcase. She had also started putting her phone on silent when she got home. First, I didn't notice. But one evening, I heard it buzz 3 times in a row while we were watching a movie. She didn't even glance at it. Just reached into her bag, turned it over, and kept watching. That wasn't normal. Amanda was surgically attached to her phone. Always had been. And then there was the gym. Amanda hadn't gone to the gym in almost 4 years. She used to joke about how she didn't need a treadmill when she had yard work and yoga videos at home. But suddenly, she was waking up early, buying new athletic wear, even talking about hiring a personal trainer. I want to feel like myself again, she said when I asked about it. And yeah, sure. Who wouldn't want that? But it felt like a script. Like she had practiced saying it in the mirror. Her perfume changed too. She used to wear this lavender and sage blend, subtle, earthy. I used to tease her about smelling like a meadow. But one night, maybe 3 weeks after the missed dinner, she came home wearing something bolder, heavier. I kissed her cheek as she walked past and recoiled a little, not from the scent itself, but from the unfamiliarity of it. I didn't say anything, but she noticed. New sample, she said quickly. Got it from one of the hotel gift shops. I nodded, but the explanation sat wrong. Amanda didn't buy perfume from hotel gift shops. Then came the weekend getaways. They started showing up in her schedule like background noise. Girls' trip to the coast. Bachelorette weekend in Seattle. Spa retreat in Hood River. Always with friends I didn't know. Never with anyone she actually spent time with locally. When I asked who was going, she'd name people vaguely. Some old college girlfriends or Sarah from work and her cousin. Not once did I see photos. Amanda, the same woman who once posted every hike, latte, and leaf-peeping photo in autumn, suddenly didn't share a single *T from her weekend adventures. And then there was the coat. It was a long, gray wool one, something she'd bought on clearance last year and barely worn. One evening in late October, she came home wearing it, hung it up in the entryway, and walked into the kitchen. I grabbed it without thinking and was hit with a scent that didn't belong to me. Men's cologne. Something crisp and faintly spicy. I didn't wear cologne, not since Amanda told me she liked clean soap and cedar better. I held the coat for a moment longer than I needed to, my fingers stiff. The worst part? I didn't ask her about it. I just hung it up. I told myself I didn't want to jump to conclusions. That accusing someone you love without proof can ruin trust faster than the betrayal itself. But the truth? I didn't ask because I was afraid of the answer. I was afraid she'd lie to my face with that same calm tone she used when she said I was overreacting. I was afraid I'd believe her. I started paying attention in new ways. Tracking patterns I never used to notice. How her smile looked forced when I mentioned mutual friends. How she stopped asking about my projects, my work, the kids I mentored. How we hadn't had a proper conversation about anything personal, not the news, not future plans, not even dreams, in weeks. Months, maybe? We had become roommates. Polite ones, even affectionate at times, but hollow. I tried to bring it up gently. Hey, I said one night as we were folding laundry. Feels like we haven't had a real night together in a while. You want to go out Saturday? Just us. She didn't even look up. This Saturday? I think I'm supposed to help Sammy with a paper. David asked if I could step in. She's struggling. David again. The same David Hunt she said was just a work contact. The financial consultant who supposedly needed advice from Amanda on his kid's essay. I nodded, trying to hide how tight my chest felt. Maybe next weekend then? I offered. We'll see, she said. And that was that. After she left for work the next morning, I stood in the living room for a long time, staring at the bookshelf. There was a photo from 2 years ago taken during a camping trip in Mount Hood, the two of us bundled in fleece, laughing in front of a tent that had nearly blown over. We looked happy. Real. But as I stood there, I realized I couldn't remember the last time Amanda laughed like that with me. Not politely, not out of obligation, real laughter. The kind that bubbles up uninvited. That realization gutted me. It wasn't one night that broke us. It wasn't one dinner, one story, or one lie. It was the accumulation, a slow layering of distance like sediment settling between river stones. The little ways she drifted. The choices she made when she thought I wasn't looking. And the things I chose not to see because I was afraid of what they meant. I used to believe that trust, once earned, was permanent. That if someone had shown up for you through sickness, money troubles, job changes, grief, if they'd stood by your side through real life, they'd never betray you. But now I know better. Trust isn't a solid foundation. It's a living thing. It needs tending, truth, presence. And when it dies, it doesn't always go out with a bang. Sometimes it just stops breathing quietly in the middle of the night and you don't notice until the morning. And that morning had come for us. Sometimes the truth doesn't come like a wave. It doesn't crash into you all at once. It arrives quiet, like a letter slipped through the mail slot when you're not looking. That's how it happened to me. Not in a confrontation, not in a confession. Just a beige envelope with Amanda's name on it, accidentally delivered to our house when it was meant for her P.O. box in town, a detail I didn't even know existed until that day. I'd gone out to grab a package I was expecting from a tool supplier. Instead, I found 2 letters rubber-banded together in our mailbox. One was addressed to me. The other, thicker, heavier, had Amanda's name written in tidy black font. The return address said something about Mariner private booking and events. I almost didn't open it. Almost. But curiosity is funny like that. It comes wrapped in reason. At first, I told myself I was just being efficient. The envelope didn't look personal. I thought maybe it was something about a client dinner or one of those marketing retreats Amanda mentioned in passing. Maybe something she wanted me to handle. I tore the top gently. Slid out the contents. The first thing I saw was an itemized invoice. Hotel reservations. 2 nights at the Archer Grand in downtown Portland. A dinner receipt from a place called Luca, an upscale Italian place that Amanda used to say was too much of a scene for her. And then, a photo. A printed photo. Like the kind they put in a corporate portfolio or travel package. Except this wasn't a stock image. It was Amanda. Her face turned slightly toward the camera, eyes half-lidded, lips just brushing the mouth of a man I hadn't seen in years but recognized instantly, David Hunt. He wasn't blurry. He wasn't cropped. This wasn't like the Instagram story where ambiguity gave room for denial. This was unmistakable. David's hand on Amanda's waist, Amanda's mouth on his. And in the background, the unmistakable green and gold pattern of the Archer's lobby carpet. I stood in the kitchen for a long time, just holding the photo. My hands didn't shake. My breath didn't catch. It was more like a kind of dull weight pressing into my chest, heavy and slow. That photo was proof, but it wasn't a surprise. It was the answer to a question I already knew the answer to but didn't want to ask out loud. I set the photo down, looked at the date on the hotel reservation. One of those weekends she said she was at a spa retreat in Hood River. The same weekend I had gone to visit my brother and thought it was strange Amanda didn't text me the entire time. Not even a goodnight message. There was no misunderstanding this. No miscommunication. No innocent explanation. I don't remember sitting down, but I did right there on the kitchen floor. The hardwood was cold through my jeans. I stared at the countertop, at the empty coffee mug Amanda had left that morning, at the little cactus she insisted we keep even though it kept tipping over in its pot. Every detail in the room was painfully ordinary, and that made the betrayal feel even more surreal. For a while, I thought about confronting her that night. I imagined the scene, me holding up the photo, her stumbling over excuses, the inevitable shouting. But then I pictured her expression calm, composed, maybe even annoyed that I'd invaded her privacy. And I realized, I didn't want that. Not anymore. This wasn't about catching her. I already had. This was about me now. It was about what I would do with the truth. I put the photo and receipts back into the envelope, slid it into a drawer in my workshop and locked it away. Not out of denial, but because I didn't need to look at it again. It had already served its purpose. Over the next few days, I moved like a ghost through my own life. Amanda didn't notice. Or if she did, she didn't say anything. We still ate dinner together, takeout most nights. She still kissed me on the cheek in the mornings, still called when she said she would. But something had gone out of me. I was present, but not really there. One night, we watched a movie together, some thriller she'd wanted to see. Halfway through, she leaned her head on my shoulder like she used to. I didn't flinch, didn't pull away, but I felt nothing. Not comfort, not affection, just a vague awareness of her weight and warmth, like a jacket that doesn't quite fit anymore. It was in that stillness that I began to understand, Amanda hadn't just betrayed me with her body. She had betrayed the life we built, the way we used to dream together, plan, support each other. She had shared those things with someone else. With David. A man who knew in *mate details about our finances, our home, our dreams. That cut deeper than the kiss. It was like realizing your favorite song had been playing on someone else's playlist for months, quietly in the background of another life. That week, I started waking up earlier than usual. I'd get dressed, go to my workshop, and just sit. At first, I didn't do anything. Just sat in the sawdust-scented air, staring at the pieces of projects I hadn't finished. A carved bench for the deck, a jewelry box I promised Amanda last Christmas. All of it felt like evidence of a man who didn't see what was right in front of him. But I didn't cry. I didn't yell or punch a wall or fall apart. Maybe I was still in shock. Or maybe part of me had been preparing for this for a long time. All the signs were there. I just hadn't wanted to connect them. What finally got me wasn't the photo. It was a comment Amanda made a few nights later as she scrolled through her phone. "You ever think about downsizing?" she asked casually. "Like, moving closer to the city? Less maintenance, smaller footprint?" I blinked. "This house is our dream house." She shrugged. "Dreams change." And there it was. The soft launch of a separation plan. A seed planted in case I started asking questions. Downsizing. Less maintenance. Less us. I nodded slowly, not trusting myself to respond. But my mind was racing. She wasn't planning a confession. She was planning an exit. Or maybe a transition, one that didn't include me. Later that night, I pulled out the envelope again. Looked at the photo one last time. Then I opened my laptop. Not to email her. Not to dig for more proof. But to start something else entirely. I clicked open a zoning map of our neighborhood. My eyes landed on the empty lot next to ours, one I'd always thought about buying but never had a reason to. Now I had one. Because I wasn't going to beg for answers. I wasn't going to wait for Amanda to leave. I was going to build something new, something real, something that couldn't be touched by lies or affairs or the quiet erasure of love. The photo, the receipt, the reservation, they were the truth. But they weren't the end of the story. They were just the beginning of mine. The morning after I found the photo, I stood in the middle of my workshop and didn't move for a long time. The same tools I'd once used to build hope now just sat there, silent, dusty, waiting. But something had changed. I wasn't waiting anymore. Not for Amanda to confess, not for the right moment to confront her, not for our marriage to somehow right itself. Whatever this was between us had become a house with hollow beams. It looked solid, but not hard enough, and it echoed with emptiness. So I made a decision. I wouldn't burn the house down. I'd build something beside it. Literally. The lot next door had sat empty for years, used occasionally by hikers who parked illegally along the fence. I'd thought about buying it once, years ago, when Amanda and I still talked about raising kids or maybe building a guest cabin. Back then, we said someday, the way people do when they think life is a rope they can keep pulling. Now, I saw the lot differently, not as potential for us, but as a blank slate for me. I called the county office the next day, checked the zoning laws, filed paperwork, paid out of pocket for the lot, and submitted a preliminary design for a woodcraft workshop and educational space. The idea came to me in flashes, like instinct: a place to teach woodworking to teens, maybe veterans. A place for people who needed a reset. A place for people like me. By the end of the week, there were flagged stakes in the ground. 2 weeks later, the sound of hammering echoed off the pines, the rhythmic noise of construction replacing the silence that had filled our home for too long. I didn't tell Amanda right away. She noticed on her own: the pile of lumber that arrived on a Tuesday, the gravel truck that rolled through our shared drive, the workers who started at dawn and didn't stop until sunset. She confronted me on a Sunday afternoon, barefoot on the porch, holding a mug of coffee like it was armor. "Are you planning to tell me what all this is?" she asked, her tone sharp but tired. I wiped sweat from my brow. "Building a school," I said simply. She blinked. "What?" "Woodcraft. Community education. Nonprofit." I filed the paperwork already. Amanda stared at me like she didn't recognize the man standing in front of her. Maybe she didn't. Maybe I didn't either. "You're joking," she said finally. "Nope." She didn't respond, just shook her head and went back inside, leaving the screen door to slam behind her. But I saw something flicker across her face before she turned: irritation, maybe. Or something closer to fear. 2 days later, she showed up again, but this time she didn't come alone. I was sketching layout plans when I heard the car pull into the drive. Amanda stepped out on the passenger side. Behind the wheel sat David Hunt. And in the back seat, a young girl I recognized from Christmas cards: David's daughter, Sammy. Amanda was dressed in designer sunglasses and stiff posture. She walked ahead like she owned the land under her feet, but David trailed behind, half curious, half guarded. Sammy didn't get out right away. She just sat there, pressed against the window, watching the half-framed structure rise from the soil. Amanda crossed her arms as she surveyed the build. "This is going to violate zoning restrictions," she said. "It's permitted," I replied without looking up. "Fully documented. You can check with the city office." She huffed. "It's loud. Construction usually is." "Why now, Cohen?" Her voice sharpened. "Why do this now?" I set down my pencil, looked her dead in the eyes. "Because I'm tired of wasting time." She didn't respond. David stepped forward then, awkwardly, offering a nod like we were strangers at a grocery store. "I didn't realize this would be such a big project," he said. "It's not your business," I replied. He opened his mouth, probably to offer some peacekeeping phrase, but Sammy exited the car just then, cutting the tension. She wandered to the edge of the site, her eyes wide. She didn't speak, just looked around as if trying to piece together the purpose of every plank and beam. Amanda called after her, "Sammy, don't touch anything," but the girl ignored her. Instead, she wandered closer to one of the workbenches. Her fingers traced a line of unfinished cedar. "You like woodworking?" I asked. She glanced up, startled to be addressed directly. "I dunno," she said. "We had a tech lab at my old school, but they shut it down." I nodded. "We'll be open in a month. Come by if you want." Amanda made a disapproving sound behind me, but I didn't look at her. A week later, Sammy came back. This time, she was alone. She rode her bike all the way from the next town over. Said David dropped her off halfway and she did the rest herself. I found her peering through the fence, a backpack slung over one shoulder. "You said I could come." I let her in, set her up with safety goggles and a block of wood. She didn't say much that day, or the next time, or the time after that. But she kept coming. Quiet, focused, always showing up just when the crew took lunch. Sammy wasn't like most kids. She didn't chatter or ask dumb questions or try to prove she knew things she didn't. She just observed. Picked things up quickly. She watched the way I held a chisel, the way I sanded with the grain, and when she started carving her own patterns, she didn't ask for praise. She just worked. I didn't pry, didn't ask about Amanda or David, but I noticed her posture changed the longer she stayed on site. Her shoulders relaxed. Her voice softened. One day she asked if she could paint her own sign for the tool room. I said yes, and she showed up the next morning with a design already sketched out. "Why are you really doing this?" she asked once as she swept sawdust from the floor. I didn't lie. Because something broke. And I didn't know what else to do with the pieces. She nodded like she understood more than a teenager should. By the time the structure took full shape, framed, roofed, wired, and ready for drywall, Sammy had become my shadow. She wasn't just helping. She was learning. Absorbing. Amanda showed up again around then. This time she wasn't calm. "You're letting her work here," she hissed after pulling me aside. "She's not working. She's learning. And she wants to be here. She's not your responsibility." "No," I agreed. "But neither are you. Not anymore." Amanda left in a cloud of perfume and indignation. But Sammy stayed. And that's when I realized something important. This place, this building, it wasn't about revenge or distraction. It wasn't about Amanda at all. It was about creating something real in a space where something false used to live. It was about giving people a reason to stay when everything else told them to run. Summer settled into the valley with a kind of slow, golden heaviness. The kind that makes wood swell slightly at the edges and air hang thick over the river. The kind of summer where time seems to drift, slow and sticky, and the days blend into one another until you're not sure when a project began or when it finished, only that you kept showing up to keep building. Sammy started showing up more too. What had begged *n as occasional curiosity morphed into regular presence. She wasn't just visiting anymore. She arrived early, stayed late, and spent her hours not just watching, but working. She'd tie back her hair, roll up her sleeves, and dive in. She learned how to read schematics, organize tools, and measure boards with the kind of precision most adults didn't bother with. When I offered her a set of safety headphones, she lit up like I'd handed her the keys to a kingdom. Amanda, however, didn't share her daughter's enthusiasm. The first official complaint came in the form of a manila envelope from a law firm downtown, something about unauthorized instructional activity and noise pollution. I read it once, folded it, and placed it beside my coffee mug like it was a misplaced menu. That afternoon, Amanda appeared again in person. "You think this is going to scare me?" I asked, holding the letter up as she marched across the gravel path in heels too thin for the terrain. "I think it's going to make you think," she replied, brushing dirt from her skirt like the air itself offended her. "What you're doing is disruptive, Cohen." "To whom?" I asked. "You. To the neighborhood. To Sammy. You can't just involve a child in your whatever this is." I took a breath. "She's not involved in anything. She's learning. She's my responsibility. She's David's daughter," I said. "And he knows she's here." Amanda's face changed then. Not entirely surprised. More like betrayed. "She's coming here without telling me," she said, more to herself than to me. "Of course she is." I didn't respond. Amanda turned on her heel and stormed off, her threats still lingering in the space between her and the woodshop. But she didn't come back for a while after that. Maybe she realized she had less control than she thought. Or maybe she just didn't care enough to follow through. Either way, Sammy kept coming. She started asking questions, deeper ones, about technique, materials, even life. "You ever mess something up so bad you just wanted to throw the whole thing out?" she asked one day as we tried to salvage a cracked maple plank. "Every week," I replied. "So what do? You figure out what can be saved. Or you turn it into something else." She looked at me then, her face unreadable. "And if you can't? Then you learn. And you move on." Sammy nodded slowly. She never told me what she was really asking, but I understood. Some questions have answers carved into silence. One day, I caught her tracing a name into a beam with her fingertip, her own, written in pencil. She quickly erased it when she saw me looking. "You don't have to hide," I said. "It's not mine," she replied. "But you're part of it," I said. "More than most." She didn't reply, but she smiled. That weekend, I organized an unofficial open day, just a soft preview for locals. I printed a few flyers at the library, handed them out at the farmer's market, and made a quick post on the community board. I didn't expect much. Maybe a few curious retirees, maybe a parent or two. But people came. Word had spread faster than I realized. We had over 24 visitors that day. A woman from the VFW brought her teenage grandson. A local high school teacher asked if I was open to semester partnerships. One man, a welder from the mill who'd recently retired, offered to teach metal in a side bay if I ever expanded. It wasn't just interest. It was momentum. Sammy stayed quiet most of the day, working behind the scenes. She helped set up displays, handed out protective goggles, and gave impromptu tours when I got pulled into conversations. No one asked who she was. She carried herself with the kind of quiet confidence that made people assume she belonged. And she did. Toward the end of the day, I found her alone in the tool room, sanding the edges of a box she'd built, nothing fancy, just clean lines and good weight. "This one's mine," she said when she noticed me watching. I nodded. "Good joints. Solid corners." I was thinking of giving it to my dad. "Why?" "I think he forgot what I'm capable of." I didn't say anything. Just handed her a brush and some finish. She didn't need approval. Just space. And that was something this place could give her. Later that evening, Amanda showed up again. She hadn't been invited to the open day, and I doubted she came to support it. More likely, someone had sent her a photo, Sammy, standing beside her project with a smile that looked like something she hadn't worn in years. Amanda walked into the workshop unannounced, heels echoing against concrete. "What is this?" she asked, waving toward the crowd that still lingered in clusters. "It's a community program," I said. "The thing you tried to shut down." Her eyes scanned the bulletin board covered in class times, supply lists, and a flyer from the city council promoting youth trades initiatives. She spotted Sammy's name, neatly written on a volunteer schedule. "You let her sign her name?" Amanda asked, as if that detail mattered more than everything else. "I didn't let her," I said. "She offered." Amanda's mouth tightened. "This isn't going away, is it?" "No," I said. "It's not." She looked around once more at the people, the structure, the evidence of something thriving. For a second, her composure cracked. "Did you build all this just to get back at me?" she asked, voice low. I thought about that for a second. Thought about the long nights, the splinters, the blueprints, the doubt. Thought about Sammy sweeping floors and finding purpose in the rhythm of tools. "No," I said. "I built it so I wouldn't lose myself." Amanda didn't reply. She turned and left without another word. Sammy came up beside me a few minutes later, clutching a small wooden plaque she'd been engraving. "Can I show you something?" she asked. I nodded. She turned it over. The wood was smooth and warm, the grain running in soft waves across the surface. Carved into the center, in crisp lettering, were two words. "Anchor point." "What's it mean?" I asked. "It's where you start," she said. "Where you come back to." I looked at her then, not as Amanda's daughter, not as David's kid, but as a person finding her way. And I realized maybe that's what we all needed. A place to start again. A week after the open day, I found an envelope tucked under the shop door. No return address. Inside was a short, typed letter, formal, clinical, like something from a broker, but the message was clear. Amanda wanted out. Specifically, she wanted to sell me her share of the house. Quietly. No meetings, no confrontation. Just a number and a line about parting on mutually beneficial terms. I stared at it for a long time. Years of shared life reduced to 3 paragraphs and a signature line. But I didn't feel the fury I thought I would. Not even sadness. What I felt was relief. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't victory. It was permission to let go. To stop holding onto something that had already let go of me a long time ago. I called a lawyer, signed the papers, and made the transfer within days. It was done. The ties that bound us legally, financially, emotionally had been cut. That weekend, I walked through the house alone. Room by room. No ghosts, no echoes. Just space. It was mine now. Fully. Not just the deed, but the story going forward. The day the school officially opened, the shop was buzzing with life. Teens hammering in unison. Veterans guiding hands with experience. Local business reps asking about workshops and sourcing materials. And at the center of it all, a sense of something bigger than the sum of its parts. Sammy stood beside me holding a plaque she'd finished that morning. She handed it to me with both hands, almost like a ceremony. Anchor point, it read. Burned into reclaimed oak, sealed with care. I didn't need a ribbon cutting or press coverage. That plaque said it all. Amanda never returned after the sale. Not to visit, not to ask about Sammy. The last trace of her presence was the final deed transfer confirmation that arrived by mail a week later. Sammy, meanwhile, enrolled in the advanced course. She showed up early, stayed late, and began mentoring new students. Watching her grow was like watching a seed push through ash, stubborn, alive, and quietly powerful. What I had built wasn't a reaction anymore. It was a legacy. And from the wreckage of what was, something solid had emerged, not a monument to pain, but a workshop of purpose. This was my anchor. And I wasn't drifting anymore.